So let me welcome you to this 112th Stockholm seminar on Japan. And it's a great honor to welcome Mr. Ambassador and Ms. Koshi-san to SSE. You've been here quite a number of times now, actually. And the first appearance you did was actually also when you came to Sweden here with SSE. So we're very grateful for that. And of course, friends and colleagues, mostly welcome. So this is a long joint endeavor, the Stockholm Seminar in Japan. It's now about 15 years into the running. And it's a collaboration between EIDS here at SSE, the Institute for Foreign Affairs, UI, Stockholm University, Department of Japanese, and the Swedish Defense College. So we collaborate on contemporary Japanese studies, seminars of this kind, and we try to bring in different speakers with different backgrounds. So in this case, we also have the great honor and pleasure to have been working together with the Embassy of Japan. So let me also express my great gratitude to the team at the Embassy for making this possible. And having our main speaker here, Professor Yoshino from Keio University. Professor Yoshino has a very long CV. So we considered that if I should actually read everything about it, we would be here until 7, 8 o'clock in the evening. So I recommend you to have a closer look at his resume online. But as you see from the invitation to the seminar, he's not only been a professor of economics at Keio University, but has also been a policy advisor over the years for several Japanese governments. So you have always had one foot in the policy side and one foot in the academic side. And of course, for SSE, wanting to be a partner for society at large, being able to work in the policy sector, but also in the academic sector with high standards is very important. So I think it's a very timely topic that you're going to talk about today. I think the crowd in the room shows the interest in Japan, which is, of course, a great joy to see so many people coming here for the seminar. And I think it's also not only timely, but it's also a very important topic, as we see that the world is becoming more and more complicated. Different relationships that used to be considered very strong or shaky, if we put it mildly. And the need for deeper integration and widening of collaboration, I think, is really needed. So without further ado, Yoshino-sensei, we're looking forward to your presentation on the new Takaichi Prime Minister Government Economic Policy. And I know you will touch upon not only the monetary and fiscal policy, but also talk about the green economy and AI and so. So without further ado, welcome to SSE.
Okay, thank you very much. As Professor Patrick Strom introduced me, I'm an honorary doctorate from University of Gothenburg, 2004. My first trip to Sweden was 1985. I had a seminar at the Lund University and Göteborg universities. So when I tried to come to Sweden, my travel agent said, "You have to go to Denmark." No, I'm going to Sweden. But my destination was Copenhagen. So I was astonished. Why I have to go to Copenhagen? Then I have to take a ferry from there to Malmö and then take the train to Lund and Göteborg. So that was my first experience. In early 1990s, I visited this school, Stockholm School of Economics, when the Professor John Sigurdsson was here. So since then, I have visited here several times. Today, I would like to talk about Prime Minister Takaichi's policy. And also, I will touch upon my own view. How could she make her policy a little bit more practical? And Prime Minister Takaichi would like to be like Margaret Thatcher. And this on the right-hand side, he's Sir Alan Walters, and he was my supervisor at the Johns Hopkins University. When I was visiting his office, one time he said, "Mr. Yoshino, I'm talking to her." So I thought he was talking with his wife, but it was Margaret Thatcher. Then it was very interesting. It took about 1 hour. I was sitting there, but he has keep on talking to Margaret Thatcher. UK should not join Euro. That was he was explaining to Margaret Thatcher. The reason was EU is a monetary union, single monetary policy, but it's not a fiscal union. Then he's explaining. I hope there is no Italian here. What he has said is support. Then I have to apologize. So please close your ears. then he's saying, suppose Italy goes into bankrupt, close to bankrupt. Then German and French, British has to support them, and then fiscal transfer will be needed. Then the Margaret Thatcher said, okay, then we should not join Euro until fiscal union will be achieved. So that was Professor Alan Walters. And he has both micro, macro, and international economics. So he's always talking to her very, very frequently. So I think if Prime Minister Takaichi will keep on long-term success, she needs something like Professor Alan Walters, who could support her policy. Because politicians, it is not needed to know everything. Then she has to assign the best person to assist her. That is how the Prime Minister should work. And I think a former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was that way. I'll touch upon it later on. I picked up 10 topics. If I had time, would like to finish everything. So that means 1 hour. Each topic I have to finish 6 minutes. First, I would like to talk about former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and then Cabinet Minister Takaichi. And number 2, during the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, there was a negative interest rate policy in number 2. And Japan had succeeded very high economic growth after World War II. But in these 20 years, Japan had been suffered for the growth. And that is mainly come from number 3, aging population. So I'd like to talk about how could we tackle with aging population. And aging population, number 4, created big fiscal deficits. Then sustainability of the debt is very important. And Prime Minister Takaichi is going to use fiscal policy, number 5. But I'm going to talk about the best fiscal policy and also not so recommended fiscal policies. Then number 6, I'll talk about environmental policies. And that has lots of rooms to have jointly EU, Sweden, Japan get together. Because many of you know, President Trump is not worried about the green economy, but we need much more cooperation. Then number 7 is the cyber security, and then 8, AI digitalization. And if I have time, I would like to touch upon 9 and 10, rural region versus big city, and also infrastructure maintenance. So probably I hope I can finish up to 7 or 8. Then this is the Prime Minister Abe, and he organized the G20 in 2019. Then under the G20, there's a T20, Think Tank 20. I was the Dean and CEO of Asian Development Bank Institute 2019. So I became a lead chair to run this T20 and the G20. So I met Shinzo Abe and explained about what kind of policies should be discussed at G20. And my next to the left, he's Mr. Sanae, former ambassador to United States. And left hand side is Vice Minister of Finance, Mr. Watanabe. So these three of us are the chair, and I became the lead co-chair and explained about the recommended policies to Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. And I found out Prime Minister Shinzo Abe knows economics, but I think I know deeper than him. But he utilized very many people who are expert in each subject. And that was very important for him. And he's a very good advocate of various policies. So I wish the Prime Minister Takaichi will become like that way, assigning the best person to each subject. Okay. Then I would like to start from former Prime Minister Abe. Many of you have heard about 3 arrows of Abenomics. First one is fiscal consolidation. Japan is facing with aging population, so debt is rising. Social welfare, pensions are increasing, and number of population is declining, so tax revenues are shrinking. That created fiscal deficits. Then that should be solved. That is number one. Second one is aggressive or progressive monetary policy. And third one is structural reform. So those are the 3 policies former Prime Minister Abe has wanted to achieve. But actually, Prime Minister Abe achieved only number 2. And number 1 and number 3 were not achieved. Then I would like to talk about monetary policy under former Prime Minister Abe and also recent changes in monetary policy. This is Mr. Shirakawa, a previous governor of the Central Bank of Japan. I and Professor Ito of University of Tokyo went to the United States in 1975, same year. So we spent 2 months at Boulder, Colorado for training English. And Mr. Shirakawa went to University of Chicago. Professor Ito went to Rochester. I went to Johns Hopkins University. So I know the former Governor Shirakawa's policy very well. Then these are the president of Asian Development Bank and also president of Asian Development Bank Institute. This is a successor of Mr. Shirakawa, Governor Kuroda, so I'm sitting next to him. And I often talk to Governor Kuroda, and even about a week ago, I had a discussion with him. So I'd like to talk about these policies. First, under Prime Minister Abe, if you remember number 2, aggressive monetary policy. And Governor Kuroda is, I think, a believer of monetarism. And when I met him on the first day of he became the governor, I visited his office at the Central Bank of Japan. Then he was talking about targeting 2% rate of inflation is very important for Japan. And Japan had been suffered deflation and recession many years. And one of his target was to achieve rate of inflation for 2%. And in order to achieve rate of inflation 2%, in those days, Japanese rate of inflation was very low. So we have to increase the rate of inflation up to 2%. Then we have to have a lower interest rate and bigger money supply. That was what he had said. And then 2016, Governor Kuroda, you can see 0 is here. So Central Bank of Japan started negative interest rate. And that was his policy. So he made the interest rate negative. And recently, after Prime Minister Takaichi came into the power, new governor is Professor Ueda. He is now trying to normalize those negative rate of interest into the positive way. And in order to keep interest rate very low, money supply has to be keep on rising. That is this figure. Governor Kuroda printed huge amount of money. When he was in the first office, it was about 150 trillion yen. This was the monetary base. Then during his term, you can see here, it went up to 600 trillion yen. So Governor Kuroda kept on increasing money supply in order to keep the interest rate in negative territory. And when central bank prints a lot of money, they have to purchase government bonds. This is just before the Governor Kuroda came into his office. Then you can see that green over there, BOJ, Bank of Japan, held only 15% of total government bonds. And most of the government bonds are held by banks, insurance companies, and the pension funds. And then dark gray area, red area, foreigners owned only 8.4%. So in Japanese case, most of the government bonds are held by domestic investors. And then banks, insurance companies, and pension funds are holding most of the government bonds. And central bank only held 15%. So this was just before the Governor Kuroda came into his office. Then after he came into the office, this is the total government bond structure. Now 52% of government bonds are held by the central bank. And to keep the low interest rate, central bank had kept on purchasing government bonds and printing money and distribute it to the society. So in total, now the Bank of Japan holds 52% of government debt. And new Governor Ueda is now reducing these holdings gradually. And new Governor Ueda was joking, it will take 100 years to make this big debt into some normal way. That was a joke, but he said he has to do it very gradually. Then this is a very interesting phenomena in here. There are two kinds of government bonds, short-term government bonds and long-term government bonds. Short-term government bonds are negative interest rate. Then nobody wants to hold negative interest rate bonds. Then short-term government bonds are mainly held by overseas investors. Why overseas investors can purchase Japanese negative interest rate bond? They are making profits by the fluctuations of exchange rate. So they sell when it is cheap and buy it in the cheap, and when it is, they sell it when it is the price is going up by changes in the exchange rate. That is why foreign investors could purchase even the negative interest rate bond. And some of the banks kept short-term interest rate negative bonds because Japanese government bonds are used as a collateral for the banks when they are lending. So even though it is slightly negative, it is better for the commercial banks to hold it as a collateral. So in the short term, mainly overseas investors. And then long-term bonds, banks, insurance companies, pension funds are holding it. But as I said, Bank of Japan has kept on increasing their holdings. And Governor Kuroda wanted to achieve 2% rate of inflation. However, when he was in his office, he could not achieve at most 1% or almost zero rate of inflation. And now we have very high rate of inflation, 3% and on. And this rate of inflation is not expected by the Governor Kuroda. Major causes of this high rate of inflation now in Japan is coming from supply side rather than demand side. Governor Kuroda wanted to achieve 2% rate of inflation by making easy monetary policy and accelerating the demand to upward. So that was his intention. But the current rate of inflation mainly comes from supply side. Two factors. One is higher oil price, so that increases lots of prices of the commodities. And then yen depreciation, that will make import price higher. So those two are the pushing up factors of the rate of inflation, and that is the current situation. And in case of these supply side inflation, traditional monetary policy will not work, because traditional monetary policy is shifting this aggregate demand curve lower or higher. That is the monetary policy by the central bank. And if it were supply side, then we may need much more efficient economy. And also, I think productivity has to be increased in order to push this aggregate supply down here. So I think current Japanese problem is coming from mainly supply side. Then what will be needed is much more efficient economy, and productivity should be increased by reducing this aggregate supply. That is a policy new Prime Minister Takaichi has to follow. Next, I would like to talk about aging population, and this is a population pyramid. In 1961, Japanese population peak was between 15 and 18, 17 years of age. That was 1961. And then this has been in 2025. You will see there are two peaks. Top one is the baby boomers, right after World War II. Their age is between 75 to 80. And this is the second generation of first baby boomers, 50 to 55. So current population pyramid is somewhere around 50, 55, and then 70 to 80 are the majority. Then 2040, 15 years later, I think our population pyramid is going up like this way. And so this figure shows Japan is facing with the huge aging population, and Japan is far ahead of other countries, followed by Korea and Thailand, so on. So what are the problems of aging population? Japan is one of the longest longevity in the world. And many people are expecting people will be able to live, will be able to live until the age of 100. Okay, it's coming back. And this is the budget conditions of Japan. Top figure is the tax revenues. And please look at the second line. This is 1990s, 1990. And pink color is Social Security. And yellow part is the National Debt Service, interest payment on government bonds. And you can see in 1990 and 2024, Social Securities are increasing significantly. And about 1/3 of Japanese budget expenditure is directed to Social Security because of aging. And interest payment on government debt, that is 27%. So if we add together Social Security and debt services, which is the interest payment on government bonds, then that creates more than 50% of the budget. Then other spendings, education, public works, and so on, didn't change so much. So biggest change is coming to Social Security and interest payment on government bonds. And the problem for the budget spending is other expenditures didn't change so much except all these two components. And that may be one of the reasons why Japanese economic recovery was not much achieved. So Prime Minister Takaichi is proposing some of these other part of spending should have been increased. But could it be possible is one issue. However, the big problem is Social Security and interest payment on government debt. Those are the two big problems of budget deficit of Japan. and they are coming from aging population. Then red line is the total government spending. Blue line is the tax revenue. So in this gap is this bar chart issue of government bonds of every year. This is the corona pandemic, COVID-19. Then government spending has been increased significantly because of protection against COVID-19. And the government issue of new bonds has increased significantly. But it came back a little bit lower. However, the gap between red and blue, that is the budget deficits, that is still keep on rising. And then this is the government debt to GDP ratio, Japan and other countries. Japan is the top, and Italy second, USA, France, UK, Canada, Germany, and these are the orders of the debt to GDP ratio. So Japan is the highest indebted nations in the world. But many of you know that Greece went into bankrupt several years ago. And what are the difference between Greece and Japan? Japanese debt to GDP ratio is higher than Greece, but still it is sustained. The major reason comes from demand for government bonds. And supply of government bonds in both countries are increasing. But big difference is who are holding these government bonds. This is 2012 when the Greece went into bankrupt. Left-hand side is Japan. Right-hand side is Greece. These are the demand. Who are holding government bonds? In case of Japan, overseas investors were only holding 5% of total government debt in 2012. So 95% of the debt are held by domestic investors. But in the case of Greece, only 1/3 are held by domestic investors, and gray part, 2/3 are held by overseas investors. So the demand structure is very different from Greece and Japan. Then this can be shown by the diagram. Left-hand side is Japan, right-hand side is Greece. When the Greece went into bankrupt, I went several times to Europe because they are just wondered. Japan is highly indebted nation, but Japan is still sustained, and Greece went into bankrupt. So many people asked me why Japan is still sustained and Greece went into bankrupt. So I use this diagram to show the difference. Both Japan and Greece, government debt is increasing to the right. And government debt, whatever the interest rate is, government has to issue government bonds in order to satisfy government spending. So in both countries, supply is shifting to the right. The difference is the demand side. In Japanese case, banks, insurance companies, pension funds are holding government bonds, and green part is by the central bank, purchased huge amount of government bonds. Then you can see the interest rate becomes negative. This is how negative interest rate policy be achieved. So central bank purchases huge amount of government bonds from the market. Then the interest rate can be set at negative. And it was kept on rising, so it was shifting to the right. On the other hand, Greece case, demand curve is shifting to the left because many foreign investors are scared about Greece bonds. It may not be returned. Then the demand has declined, and many investors sold Greece bond and purchased Euro bond or US bond, and rather than purchasing Greece bonds. So demand curve is shifting to the left. In Japanese case, domestic financial institutions and central bank purchased those bonds, so demand curve were increasing. So Japanese case, these are the interest rate fluctuations. Japan's interest rates were the lowest among many developing countries. But Greece case, foreign investors shifted their bonds from Greece bonds to other bonds, then the interest rate went up very high. Then Greece has to pay very high rate of interest, and together with their high budget deficits, and Greece went into bankrupt. So those are the differences between Japan and Greece. So demand side is very important. Next, I have to use some equations, but I would like to explain as simple as possible. The next one is fiscal sustainability. Whether the budget deficits will be sustained or budget deficits will keep on rising. And Professor Doma of MIT created the formula. We should compare the rate of interest and growth rate of the economy. If the rate of interest is higher than the growth rate of the economy, budget deficits will keep on rising. So Professor Doma has proposed we should compare the rate of interest and growth rate of the economy. If interest rates are higher than growth rate of the economy, this will become positive. Then left-hand side will keep on positive. That means debt will keep on rising. So this is how Professor Doma has created. Then this is his result. In the left-hand side, interest rates are lower than growth rate of the economy, stable. The budget deficits will be sustained. On the other hand, if interest rate is higher than growth rate of the economy, then the budget deficits will explode. And this Professor Doma's Doma condition is very famous. Even the World Bank are using this equation. And many professors at MIT and USA are using it. And I'm going to show this is wrong. Professor Doma used supply side of the government bonds. United States is the only country they don't have to worry about the demand for government bonds. In case of crisis, many people want to hold US dollar and gold. Then US dollar, they purchase American government bonds. So United States, they don't have to worry about demand. That's why Professor Doma was only focusing on supply of the government bonds. But except for United States, we have to think about demand and supply of government bonds. Then the result will be different. We have to look at the accumulated amount of government debt in comparison to demand for government bonds domestically, and also overseas investors' demand for government bonds. So this is the new condition for the sustainability of the budget. Unfortunately, Professor Doma passed away, so I could not meet him again. When I was a visiting scholar at MIT, I met him. But at that time, it was about more than 30 years ago, I could not come up with this equation, so I could not talk to him. But if he would be alive, I would like to debate him. His recommendation is only applying to United States. But the important thing is demand side. Domestic demand, foreign demand, in comparison to the accumulated supply of government bonds, that has to be compared. Then in the paper, I have shown Chinese case, Japanese case, Greece case, and Japanese case is still stable, but the Greece case is violating this condition. Next, I would like to talk about the aging population of Japan, which I briefly touched upon. Prime Minister Takaichi is talking about Japan should use fiscal policy to achieve economic recovery. But we have to be very careful about young society versus aged economies. And I found out this is the paper I used dynamic stochastic general equilibrium model and how the fiscal spending will affect to the economy. Then when the population is young, multiplier effect is very high, about 1.5. So 1 trillion increase of government spending will increase GDP 1.5. because when the population is young, fiscal policy will create new jobs. Then workers can increase their consumption. That will increase GDP, which is called the multiplier effect. So when the population is very young, then multiplier effect will work, just like John Maynard Keynes has suggested. But when the economy is facing with aging population, on the right-hand side you can see multiplier effect is less than 1, which means 1 trillion US dollar spending on government GDP, government spending, cannot create more than 1 trillion yen growth of GDP. Because when the population is aging, even if there were fiscal policy, many people had been retired. Then the impact of fiscal policy only affect to the younger population who are working into the society. And that portion is becoming smaller and smaller. Then the fiscal policy effectiveness will decline. That is what I found in my result. Then in these cases, Japan is on the right-hand side, but many Asian countries are on the left-hand side. Then what should we do in these cases? And Prime Minister Takaichi is going to talk about the importance of fiscal policy. And then I would like to talk about 2 important points of the fiscal policy. First one is in the aging society. How could it be possible to make multiplier effect, effectiveness of fiscal policy, large despite of aging population? And my conclusion is on the left-hand side, blue lines. Productivity-based wage rate rather than seniority wage rate. Japan has a seniority wage rate. So if people becomes older, then the wage rate becomes higher. But most important thing is productivity-based wage rate. If someone's productivity goes down as their age becomes older, that should be lowered. And second one is postponed retirement age. Currently, Japanese retirement age is mainly 65, which is postponed 70, 75, 80. So postponed retirement age. The best solution is if everybody works until the day before they die, then we don't need any social welfare, okay? Because everybody is working for themselves. So that is the best solution for Japan. I hope Prime Minister Takaichi could convince people, Japanese people has to work until the day we die. So that is the best policy. I showed in the dynamic stochastic equilibrium model. And I think suppose we hire elderly people, number one, digital technology will be helping a lot for those elderly people, robots, and many, many things. So I think currently aged people can work longer compared to before. And robot can assist elderly workers. And in addition to that, female participation in the labor force, this is increasing. And seniority wage system has to be changed to productivity-based wage rate. And skill trainings, online trainings are important. And mobility of jobs from one job to another, labor mobility will be very important. And surprising by survey of Japan, 70% of Japanese would like to work even after they retire. It's very different from France. I hope there's no French people here. In France, only 20% said we want to work, and they said they would like to retire. But in Japan, 70% of the people are saying we want to work, we want to contribute. And when I made this presentation in front of old ladies, then they are very much supporting me. Old ladies said, when my husband was working, he only ate breakfast. Lunch and dinner, they ate outside. Then she doesn't have to care about what he should do. But once he retired, she has to prepare 3 meals. Then he was complaining, tastes are not so good. And also he doesn't know what to do. So she has to tell them, why don't you go to the walk for a walk and jogging and so on. So many old ladies supported me. I wish my husband can work until the day before they die. So I think I have a strong support, 50% of the Japanese population. And the productive-based wage rate. So those are the very important policy for Japan. I wonder whether Prime Minister Takaichi can introduce these policies or not, but that is theoretically the best solution. Then next, I compared various fiscal policies. There are 4 kinds of fiscal policies. First one is transfer from the government to elderly people or retired people. That is number 1, transfer policy. Second one is government consumption. Government pay for their workers, and government investment, and R&D and technological progress, expenditures for technological progress. The most important effective fiscal policy is the last one. So government has to spend money to increase productivity of the society, and that has the biggest impact of Japan. So I hope the Prime Minister Takaichi will follow this equation, follow these results, and then achieve the progressive and productive economy by providing lots of technological progress, R&D, and expenditures. And in order to do so, we have to utilize AI and digitalization. Recent papers by World Bank. AI and DX stands for digital technologies. AI and digital technologies will widen the income disparities. That is the World Bank view. Because educated people or high-skilled people can utilize AI and digital technologies, so their productivity will become bigger and bigger. On the other hand, simple job, they will be replaced by AI and digital technology. So World Bank says digitalization and AI will widen the income disparities. But I have a slightly different view of the World Bank. Households, even the simple job, they can obtain skill development by digital education, online education. Then many people in the simple job can increase their productivity by listening to those education programs. And that can mitigate the disparities of simple work and sophisticated works by introducing digital education. And I hope everybody can listen to those programs through their mobile phone. Then on even the simple job, as long as they can have mobile phone, they can educate by themselves and increase their productivity. So that will be number 1, number 2. Then one more important thing is government workers. If I go to some local offices, government workers are working very hard from 9 o'clock until 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock. They are doing manual job, writing numbers and so on every day. But there is no incentive mechanisms for them to improve their productivity or to introduce AI or digital technologies. So I think we have to give some bonus for those government workers if they can improve the cost efficiency. Then some part of those reduced cost can be compensated by these bonuses. Singapore in Asia has a very interesting incentive mechanism for government workers. If the real economic growth rate is positive, then they can receive some bonus. So I think that creates the incentive mechanisms to make efficient government and better economic policies. So some kind of incentive mechanism will be needed for the government to introduce AI and digital technologies, and that can enhance the welfare. So these are the equations. Okay. Last topic, I'm going to talk about green economy and increase of policies to improve environmental issues. This is in 2019. There was a Global Solutions Summit. And this is the Chancellor Merkel here. You can see here, backside here, mine, and I'm on the screen. So I talked about the policies which I'm going to talk. And Chancellor Merkel fully supported me what I have said. Then Chancellor Merkel said, Professor, why don't you come to the studio of the television and then talk about what you have said? So after I finished my discussion with Chancellor Merkel, I went to the television station in Germany. It was an English program. So I was talking about 5 minutes about what I have said. Then Chancellor Merkel said, why Japan does not introduce what I have recommended. So that was what she said. So I hope we can do it this way, what I'm going to say. Carbon dioxide, CO2, emission of CO2 is about 80% causes of global warming. So in this today's speech, I just focus on CO2 emissions. And about 63% of these CO2 emissions in Europe are produced by small and medium-sized enterprises. So CO2 emissions reduction is very important, but the 63% are produced by small and medium-sized enterprises. So that means not only large businesses, but also small and medium-sized enterprises has to reduce their CO2 emissions. And there are 4 different policies to achieve green economy. One is ESG, and I'm focusing on E, environmental part. And second one is carbon pricing. And third one is green bonds. And fourth one is carbon tax. So these are the 4 policies often discussed in Japan. And I'm talking about a net carbon tax or net carbon price. This net means companies are exposing CO2 emissions, but if they are planting trees or they are setting up renewable energy on the roof of the factories, then those reduction of CO2 should be taken out from their emission. So net means their actual emission of CO2 minus green efforts should be taken into account. Then we should apply net carbon pricing or net carbon tax. Current problem in the world is carbon pricing. Prices are so different. EU is very stringent, so carbon price is very high. The bottom one is China. Carbon prices are very low. So even though carbon prices are introduced, there are huge diversities. I think Europe, Japan, or Sweden and Japan should work together. We should have unified carbon pricing, unified net carbon pricing. That will be very important. And US will not follow, but Europe and Japan and Sweden and Japan should cooperate together to this green transformation. And I'm going to talk about different policies, but it will become identical whichever the policy should be taken. So green credit rating, ESG rating, is looking at the CO2 emission of each company and multiply theta. So some of the companies are AAA, some of the companies are BBB, some of the companies are C, depending on how much CO2 each company is exposing. So environmental criteria is theta times CO2, and this theta changes AAA, AA, single A, and so on. And then carbon tax is tax rate T times CO2. And green bond, they have also the credit rating for green bond, and that should be rated by theta. And carbon pricing is P times CO2. Then when you look at here, if P is equal to theta is equal to T, then all these proposed policy instruments will become identical. Then the most important thing is we should measure the amount of CO2 emissions each company is exposing. And I would like to skip here. And this is the equipments in Japan often used to measure the amount of CO2 emissions. In Yokohama City, next to Tokyo, the mayor has forced all the schools, classrooms, they have this equipment. They have somewhere here. Then they can check temperature, moisture, and the amount of CO2 emissions. Then theoretically it is possible to measure the CO2 amount in factories, buildings, by setting up these equipments. And furthermore, this one is a little bit more expensive compared to others. This one can transfer the data. For example, I hope it can be transferred to electric power company. Then electric power company can charge electricity at the same time by looking at monthly average of CO2 emissions. Then theoretically they can charge carbon pricing or carbon tax by looking at these numbers. So I think based on Japanese these equipments, it's possible to measure CO2. Then once we can measure CO2, either carbon pricing or carbon tax or green bond, we can charge to many companies. And when I wanted to give this speech in front of business people, then the organizer said, Professor Yoshino, don't talk about carbon tax. In Japan, many companies hate carbon tax. So when I gave a speech, I erased this part. And I'm saying carbon pricing is very important. However, if price P is equal to carbon tax rate T, then it's the same thing. But the business people didn't realize. So they thought, oh, carbon pricing is very good. So, but as a fact, it is the same to everybody. But we have to force the companies to set up these small equipments, and then that can measure the CO2 emissions. Then mathematically, I've shown those different policy tools will become identical. I'm writing this paper. Okay. Then lastly, 2 minutes. I would like to talk about cyber security and economic impact. I think this can also be coordinated with Sweden, Europe, and Japan and Asia. Mr. Masayoshi Chida, I think he's from Ministry of Finance. He's now in OECD. There's one person from Ministry of Finance over there. Okay, I think he knows Mr. Chida. And when Mr. Chida was assigned to OECD, he came to my office. Professor, what kind of topic should I tackle at OECD? And I told him, why don't you go to cybersecurity? That may be a very hot topic in OECD. So I'd like to talk about how we have created to achieve cybersecurity. One important damage for the company, if some company is attacked by cyber, then stock prices will come down significantly. Once the news will be broadcasted, then the stock market prices will go down. So because of this impact on negative price for stocks, some of the Japanese companies do not report even if they have been attacked. And small businesses, they don't know whether they are attacked by cyber or whether that is the problem of their own computer. So unfortunately in Japan, these cyber attacks are not reported 100%. The financial institutions, we have central bank and financial services agencies. So they have to report, they have a forced. But ordinary businesses, small businesses, they are not. And because they are afraid of the reduction of price of the stocks. So I think reporting will be very important for all the companies so that the government will realize what kind of cyber has been being attacked. And cyber security and global companies, they have a big impact because that is connectivity of headquarters to their subsidiary companies. And data will be leakage and interconnectivity of the business that will affect to other sectors. So I'm proposing, okay, like this. Japan has set it up country basis, country stage of the cybersecurity unit. So all the companies should report if they have a attack by cyber, then they should report to this country level institution. And in order to make companies to report to the government agency, they have to have some incentives. So once the government organization receives the report from the company, my company seems to be attacked by cyber. What shall I do? Then the government organization should provide protection program immediately, and then tell them what kind of aftercare the company should do. And also they can provide trainings for those employees. That can create an incentive mechanism for the companies to report to the country. Then all these countries get together to the global organization. We should set up global organization. Since Mr. Chida is OECD, I put OECD on the top. And then OECD was very glad we can have a global center of cybersecurity. But we have to convince the United States and other countries. France agreed because G7 of this year is in France. So France agreed, and Israel agreed, and other countries agreed. Then the problem is about the United States. Then we changed this OECD to USA. Then the Trump administration was very glad. Oh, all the report will come to United States. Oh, it's a very good idea. So US didn't oppose it. So I hope this idea of nationwide country level organization and global organization. Then the global organization can capture all the cyber attacks coming from all the world, and then top engineers will be gathered together in international organization, and they can provide programs and consultations and so on. Current problem of cyber security is each company is paying huge amount of money and hire the experts. That is very costly. Then we should have the center in each country, and then global center. That could be much simpler, and that can have a much better impact onto the economy. So I think that's all I want to say. And any comments? And Mr. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yoshino Sensei, for this exquisite presentation. I think it was a little bit of a Swedish-style smorgasbord of different topics that you put on the table. Some problems and some challenges, but I think you also showed that there are several opportunities for collaboration, for actually handling some of the complexities that we see in the Japanese economy. And we all look forward to see how the new Takaichi government will be able to tackle this. And then if she would have some kind of advisor like Sir Alan Waters, that is the key question then. We also are very fortunate to have a distinguished discussant with us today, George Martin from the Business Sweden, and which also today published your business environment analysis report. A lot of things happening in the world, so we're very grateful that you're here with us today. So you will kick us off with some comments, and maybe then we open up for discussion. So the screen is yours, George.
It's on, right? Thank you. Well, while my computer is starting up, I would actually like to thank the Institute for another thing. It was long ago. It was, I think, 2000. I was going to high school, and I was living just in the next house down the street here. Thank you. So I had the way past Stockholm School of Economics each day. So I went past Stockholm School of Economics, as I did every day. And lo and behold, just 5 meters next to me was the Japanese emperor, Akihito. So that gave me, I have to thank the Institute then, for the best excuse I've ever had for running late to chemistry. Well, it's a great honor to be here. It was super interesting. Japan is always an interesting economy. There are things that I would like to focus on here. First of all, I should probably mention that I'm George Morgan. I am the senior analyst and in charge of the macroeconomic forecasts at Business Sweden. And Business Sweden is a company that is partly owned by the government, but we're also connected to the business sector. Partly owned, and we have to make a profit, which implies that we also have a connection to companies that are active in Japan. We have an office in Japan. So when I do these kind of talks, I have a colleague that is working in Japan, which gives me a bit of an edge and an insights compared to a lot of other economists here in Sweden. So we have a connection to Japan. But just as Patrick noted, today we presented our forecast, the global economic forecast. And I can just show you how it looks here. I'm not going to talk about specifics here of the forecast, but we have a big global economic model that gives us a forecast for each country in the world. Super interesting, and it gives us possibilities to see exactly what's going to happen in different countries, giving our assumptions that we do in the economy. So this is our base case. We see a global economy that in 2026 is kind of losing steam. We are somewhat optimistic to Japan. It's the different colors here are showing if it's black, it's a shrinking economy, all the way up to very quickly growing positive, a growth of 6%, like we see, for example, in India. So we are not presenting a case where we think that the global economy is yet affected by the crisis in the Middle East, with the war there. But when we are looking ahead and when we are tweaking our assumptions and we are doing, I don't want to push numbers here, but when we are making forecasts where we assume that the war, that the production of oil and gas in the Middle East is severely lower and the prices of oil and gas are increased, one of the main economies that are hit so bad is the Japanese economy. Of course, we see black spots in Europe as well and in the Middle East, but Japan is, of course, really affected, being so dependent on oil and gas as it is. And further on, if we were looking ahead to 2027, the rest of the world kind of bounces back, specifically the Middle East. We presume that oil will come out in the market again. But what happens in the next step is that Japan is still very much hurt by this effect. It's a long-run effect in our model due to this high gas price and oil price, which has me a bit of a worry here. Well, so there's an economy that is sensitive to what's happening. With that said, I mentioned that we have connections to companies and people that are active in the Japanese market. Given that geopolitical worry that we're seeing with the trade policy and geopolitical uncertainty, we also note that Japanese companies and Swedish companies are kind of finding each other right now. There's a lot of talk. This institute in itself is kind of an inspiration here, and we do see that there is an attempt to find the like-minded economies all over the world. And we are very happily to note that Japan is really making an effort here. And I think we also have to understand and kind of tweak a bit of our perspective when we judge the Japanese economy, that the challenges outside of Japan is very much dire. And the need of getting the like-minded economies, like-minded policies is very important. It's also, I would argue, one optimistic thing that is happening And I think the comment on the structural reforms and what's happening on the labor market specifically is super interesting in Japan. For not that it's just needed, I think there's a case where it's actually going in the right direction already. So I was delving into Japanese labor market data. Super interesting. This graph shows, this is just a squiggly line as far as you can tell right now. It's the number of employees in the Japanese labor market that have been given a new job. And they were only, there's some caveats here. You can read the fine print if you can really focus here. What you can see is that they switched jobs and they were just unemployed less than a month. So we can see that this is going up somewhat on the Japanese labor market. But that's not in itself the interesting part. If we start to divide up these in different ages, we see that it's not an increase in the young people or the more of the middle-aged people. We see an increase in the people who are changing jobs that are the people who are elderly. Of course, a very good economist or econometrician will note that, of course, there's a lot more elderly people in the Japanese labor market. But what you can actually do is you can see how many of these people, the share of employed that are job switchers. And what we note here that the trend in itself is not increasing that much, but the increase is from the elderly, the people that are at least older part of the labor market. So we see here definite trends in that people who are older than, well, I shouldn't call elderly here, older than 45, are changing jobs more frequently. And this labor market mobility is so important. That's one of the main parts of how you get an economy more efficient, to get the best people to be at the right job. And this is something that I think is an issue in the Japanese labor market, something that we've in Sweden been kind of saying that we are good at changing jobs, but if we look at the same kind of data, it's not measured in the same way, so you can't compare levels here. What we're seeing in Sweden is that the share of people who are switching jobs is actually decreasing. So we are kind of facing the demographic issues that Japan has been knowing about and have been kind of constructing policies around for decades. So we are facing an issue in Sweden where we have to kind of take care of this, get back to labor mobility and be a bit more efficient in our labor market. Well, my takeaway here is, and kind of connected to going to these kind of talks, is that Japan, as far as, for example, demographic issues, you often get told, at least when I was working in the Ministry of Finance, you want to like solve the issue by making more babies and immigration, but maybe you can't stop the demographic issues that we have. Instead, I think you can look towards, for example, Japan and see what worked. Because Japan is leading the way kind of here. It's not a good thing to be ahead of the demographic curve, but still, they are the ones that are developing and realizing the issues and taking care of the issues in a way that the rest of the world is kind of having now realized that they have to adapt to, more, at least more so. So I would just like to emphasize the need of looking towards Japan when it comes to these issues, because they are ahead. And that was actually my main takeaway here. And thank you.
Thank you so much for that, George. So this gives us ample time for continuing the discussion. Do you want to respond to comment shortly before we open up the floor, Yoshino-sensei?
Okay. Thank you very much. Very important point. In Japan, that many people change their jobs very frequently nowadays, because there is a couple of companies who are introducing the new job by online. Then people can look for the job which will be suitable for their age and also their skills. That market is created very well. And furthermore, they have some special service. Traditionally, if one wants to quit the job, he has to go to the office. Then he has to tell to the boss, I'm sorry, but I want to go to another company. Nowadays, they are handled by specific company. So he doesn't have to go to the office. Then someone will come there. Yeah. So that has made it much, much easier. I think this labor mobility, and also if the elderly people can find jobs, as you have shown, then that will be the ideal situation. People can work as much as they could, and also looking for the suitable job. So I think hopefully this will strengthen Japanese economy because many people will keep on working. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a question over here. So while I'm moving myself over there, you can still think of some questions to.
Yes, Professor Yoshino, thank you very much. Does it work?
Yeah, it's on.
Thank you very much for a very interesting and very comprehensive presentation. My question is also about aging and the labor market. It's a bit of a complex question, but I'm sure you understand. If you take the labor market, you have different ways of slicing it. You have the employed, the self-employed, you have agriculture, industry and services, and you have the public and the private sector, right? Now, if you look at aging, yeah, if you look at agriculture, that's basically self-employed people. There's no real problem with continuing to work. In fact, I think the average age of the agriculture worker now is something like 65 or so. That's not the problem. On the service side, if you look at shopkeepers or the plumbers, many are self-employed. There's no real problem. You can work till, you know, you're 80 or 90, whatever. So I think the real problem is in industry and in the public sector, right? So you advocate that you amend the seniority wage system. So there are two questions here. First, what is the role of the private sector and the public sector in adjusting the wage seniority rate? I mean, what does the government do? What do industry do? And the second question is, what does the government as employer do when it comes to wage seniority? Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Very important point. There are different sectors in Japan. Agricultural sector, small businesses, small restaurants, they can keep on working. Yeah. And wage rate is, in a sense, productivity based. Because if they can sell more, then their income will become higher. So I think those people is ideal situation as I have described. However, those who are working in the big company or big banks, they have been very much talented, they have education, but at the age of 60 or 65, whether they are very good productive person, they have to retire. And this is because of seniority wage rate system. Company wants to get rid of those high wage people. So if the company, for example, they can keep on going at the age of 50, for example. Then after that, some people will be flat. Some may keep on going, some may be going down. So I think that may be the first step, so that the companies will evaluate each people. Then based on productivity, they can keep on going. I think that could be one way. But the biggest problem is so-called workers in the big company. And the government, I think I completely agree. The government has to also introduce productivity-based wage rate. However, they said in Japan, Japanese government are group working. It is not individual working. And then one company, Tokyo Marine Insurance Company, they have introduced productivity-based wage rate in a sense. Suppose one is in auto insurance section. Another one is ship, sea marine insurance. Then they know the amount of profits of each year. Then the bonus is based on their productivity. And then they have been distributed to the workers. And also they introduced 360-degree evaluation in the same department, anonymous and without name. Who do you think working very hard? And who do you think they're not so good? Then bonus is based on those 360-degree evaluation. And that may be a little bit closer to productivity wage rate. So I hope Japanese government could do the same thing. But government's case, productivity is very difficult to measure. So if we have any good suggestions, I would like to take it into my next paper. Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, we have a cluster of 3 questions over here. So should we take the 3
Yes,
questions
yes.
and then you can respond?
Yes.
So Ari, you're sitting first here and then you can pass the mic on, please.
Thank you very much for an interesting and slightly provocative presentation. I sympathize with your idea that we should work until the day before we die. I like my job. But could you all perhaps expand a little bit? I understand that it will affect public expenditure and social expenditure and stuff like that. But would you expand a little bit on what it means for Japanese savings and what the effects of that might be?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you as well for the talk. I was wondering, you didn't really touch a lot on trying to fix the Japanese fertility rate. Do you think that's just like the ship has sailed, or is there still hope for that?
Okay.
Okay, see if we can pass the mic over there. Thanks.
Thank you so much for your talk. As a Japanese citizen, I'm recently very much concerning about things happening in the world. And since I was working for like petrochemical business before in the supply chain, what do you think about our government deciding subsidy to the gasolines and but if we should maybe save the oils or those, it's very related to very political questions. But I wonder your opinion, how Takaichi is reacting these days political situations and oils. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So 3 comments. First one is savings of Japan. Japan has a very high savings ratio during the high economic growth period. Household savings went up to 24%. So we had a very high savings rate because our population was very young. Once retirement and aging population started, people decumulate their savings after retirement. So savings rate has been diminished drastically. But if the people will keep on working, then they have income. So that will regain the savings rate of Japan. So, okay, in Japan, there's a dynasty idea. So they will save for the children. Yeah, so that is a Japanese style, maybe different from France. And your question was about, fertility rate, I see. Yeah, fertility rate, okay. One is education costs are very high. Second one is housing costs are very high. So those are the 2 reasons. And there are several other reasons, but these 2 are very high. Okay, cost of living is high. And then if they have many children, then education costs a lot. So my idea is we should keep on remote working much more. So one does not have to live in close to Tokyo or big city. They can live in rural area and come to Tokyo once a week or 2 or 3 times a month. Then the problem is how to educate their children. I think online education should be provided. In Japan, we have top teachers in each subject. For example, physics, mathematics. Then those teachers, we can take the tape recording of their lecture. Then the children all over Japan could listen to those lectures. Then wherever they live, the children can get the top level education. Then the cost of education will go down. Then if they live in remote area, then housing prices are very low. Then they don't have to worry about the cost of living. And if they are living in countryside, then their children can grow much, much better than living into the cities. So those are my idea. But probably there are maybe many other things. Thank you. And last one is oil price. I think subsidies, as I compare to various fiscal policies, subsidies has the lowest economic impact. So oil subsidies will not solve the Japanese problem. Theoretically speaking, oil price increase means aggregate supply curve pushed upward. Then in order to reduce those aggregate supply, productivity efficiency, cost efficiency, improvement of technology, those are important. Suppose oil price goes up to 5%, then company's productivity should be reduced 5%. Cost efficiency should be reduced 5%. Then all those increase could be offsetted. So I think what government has to say is, if we are facing with higher oil price, we have to think about how to improve our productivity by introducing robot AIs and so on. Because there are so many jobs who have idle work in Japan that should be reduced. Yeah.
So we have two questions over here, starting with one there.
Thank you for enlightening us about the situation in Japan. In Sweden and in all Europe, we are facing now no jobs for academia, for academics. They are coming out of universities, they are young, well-educated, etc., but they have no jobs. How did you remedy to this in Japan? And how do you finance R&D? Is it by the government or Japanese companies also contribute? Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see if I can. There we go.
Should I ask?
Yes, please.
Yeah. You mentioned that wives refuse to cook. Or wives don't like to cook for men when they retire. And my question is, why don't they refuse to cook and enter the labor market themselves? And the question is, what are the impediments for increased female participation in the labor market?
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. First one is unemployment for young people. In Japanese case, it is a labor shortage. Because foreign tourists are increasing in Japan. So even many restaurants in rural area, they need people to work. So I think a young generation in Japan, there are so many opportunities to work. So probably that is very different from Europe. Unemployment rate for young people are very low. And many companies are looking for younger people compared to senior people. So I think that situation is different. And one of the reasons is Japanese economy started to recover a little bit. At the same time, new industries are growing and foreign tourists are coming into Japan. That has created new jobs. So I think situation is different. Then about elderly ladies, I was joking about those cookings. And then in Japan, the female participation in the labor market is now one of the top and exceeding the United States in these several years. So female participation is becoming bigger and bigger. And also that talented people in the businesses, they hire ladies. So I think situation has been significantly changed. And also even the rural area elderly people, they go to the restaurants because lots of tourists are coming in. So they need people to work. So I think female participation in Japan is drastically increasing. Yeah, thank you.
We have one question over here, so we might have time for two more questions.
Hi, sorry. Thank you for your very interesting speech. It was very insightful. I just want to know, the Prime Minister has recently made it a little bit more, or maybe not a little bit more, but a lot more expensive to apply for visas as someone like a foreigner, an expat going into Japan and wanting to work there. What is your opinion on that? Do you think that it's going to maybe scare it will make it unattractive for foreign talent to come to Japan, or do you think that it was somehow a good decision?
Okay. And then we have behind you, we have the final question up there. Yes.
How much does Takaichi prioritize according to a stabilized budget?
Oh, okay. First one is foreign workers and visas for Japan. I think there are many, many Indians are now working in technology advanced industries. And those higher top engineers are coming to Japan a lot. So I think that is a very good sign, and that can improve our productivity. So from Asia, newcomers of people are coming in. And also in the construction companies and so on, they hire their fixed term workers. So they be trained in Japan 3 years, 2 years, and they will go back to their home country. So I think labor shortage will widen the foreign workers in Japan, but at the same time, skilled workers are increasing more. So I think the trend will become much, much better compared to the past. Yeah. And your question is about budget. Okay. So I think important thing is to reduce social security. That is 1/3 of our budget. Then in order to reduce social welfare, we have to ask elderly people to participate in the labor market. That is one most important thing. And if that could be done, then 1/3 of our budget spending will become zero. So that is the ideal situation. Yes.
Thank you so much for that answer. With a big hand, thank you for presenting today. And also to George Martin for coming and sharing your impact analysis of the latest report. And thank you to all of you coming here this Thursday afternoon. I think we almost got into a shortage of space in the room, and I think that's an excellent sign that we see there is a very strong interest in Japan among the Swedish academic, public sector, and the business sector. And I think that's the stars are really aligned when it comes to the future of Japanese studies. And we are very fortunate also to not only have Yoshino Sensei here for a few days, thanks to the embassy, but we also have the great fortune to have Professor Yoshino as the chairman of the EIDS Advisory Board, which we are very grateful for your engagement with SSE and EIDS. So with that, I wish you a great afternoon. Please check out our seminars, more to come on Japan. So hope to see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you so much.